Hey everybody, it's the Red Man again, back with a think piece about the nature of video games and why the video game industry seems to be at odds with its own existence, which I will explain as we go on. First of all, I would like to point out that inherent in the name video game is that video games are an interactive medium. They are meant to be played as a means of connecting you to the story, the world, whatever's going on in the game. Without that game aspect, they're not actually video games. They're just like a movie or a book. And the recent news about Axiom Verge 2 helps highlight this little issue. First of all, let me say that I played Axiom Verge 1, which was just Axiom Verge. If you have any love of 2D Metroid-type games, by all means, go play Axiom Verge. It's good. If you just hate 2D Metroid games, Axiom Verge is not for you. In this article from the Kings of Cancer themselves, Kotaku will help highlight the issue to allow me to explain to you what I mean as I listen to the sound of my own voice. First of all, and this isn't really on the topic of the video, but this headline right here, allow me to read it in my most condescending, mocking, soy boy tone of voice. Optional boss fights? Hell yes.
Let me make this perfectly clear. This is not acceptable.
I swear to God, Joss Whedon ruined at least one entire generation of English-speaking humans with his cutesy pie, meta, nothing matters, snarky, witty, allegedly fucking witty, bullshit dialogue. It's why we have crap like this. There needs to be an editor at Kotaku that says, Luke, Mr. Plunkett, see this shit right here? This is not acceptable. For at least the duration of the entire headline, we are going to have to pretend to be a reputable journalism outlet. I know, we're not, but let's pretend for at least the headline. Instead of writing this cringe-inducing estrogen-poisoned garbage, just write a matter-of-fact headline, Axiom Verge 2 makes boss fights optional. And then you can write your little hack shill article. But before I give myself a stroke about something that's not even the topic of the video, let's actually get onto the article. I'm going to read it, and then I'll be able to react to it. There's a big feature on the upcoming Axiom Verge 2 over on PlayStation blog, and while the whole thing will be of interest to fans of the first game, there's one passage in particular that really stood out to me. Written by series creator Tom Happ, it talks about how he's approaching the tough question of difficulty when it comes to designing games. And the novel solution, solutions, this shit, stop it. Stop this twee bullshit. Just talk like a normal goddamn reporter. Just report the stuff to me, please. Let's start back at the beginning of the sentence. Written by series creator Tom Happ, it talks about how he's approaching the tough question of difficulty when it comes to designing games, and the novel solution he's come up with for Axiom Verge 2, leaving out this because it's going to give me cancer. Now, Tom Happ here, although I try to put on my blinders with respect to other people's opinions about my game and stay true to the original vision, one common theme came up when I watched people play. There were some people who wished the games were a lot harder, and there were those who wanted it to be easier. Some loved the exploration, but just got to a boss they couldn't get past. That's happened to me. I can't tell you how many times I've had to stop playing a game because of a choke point. I'm willing to bet it's not that many. For fuck's sake, video games are not that hard. You managed to make a good Metroidvania-style video game. You're not that stupid or incompetent. I address the difficulty issue in two ways. First, I'm letting players adjust their own difficulty settings. Rather than choose among easy, normal, and hard mode, players can adjust both how much damage they do and how much enemies damage you. This right here is rather annoying, at least to me. This is a smaller issue, and it might just be me personally having a hang-up. I've played some sports games that have 1,000 difficulty sliders, and apparently expect me to balance their game for them. And it's a bit of a fucking nuisance. But here's the real issue I have with this nonsense. Second, bosses are optional. why buy a video game if you don't want to play it? You know, we'll get to it. Second, bosses are optional. You will be rewarded for defeating them, but gone are the days where they stood in between you and the rest of the game. They are the game, you schmuck. Continuing with the article, without obviously... Why? I'm sorry, it's just that I'm part of the human species, and seeing other humans act this insipidly hurts me in my soul. Without seeing how they work in practice, in theory, these ideas both sound fantastic. Sometimes boss fights are challenging and rewarding experiences, and other times they're just tedious roadblocks standing between you and the actual fun parts of a game. So sure, why not give the players the option to turn them off if they want? He seems to be assuming, and I don't know if there's any evidence of this, but he seems to be assuming that there's just going to be an on-off switch for whether bosses are even in the game. From what I got from Tom Happ's actual blog post here, it sounded like the game would be structured such that you could pick and choose individual bosses to fight, and that you'd be able to progress throughout the game just by avoiding a boss if you didn't want to fight it. I don't know what it's actually going to be, but clearly me and Mr. Plunkett here assumed different things. And damage sliders? Even better! General difficulty settings do their job in the most overriding sense, but the option to fine-tune things, like, say, leaving yourself vulnerable at higher difficulty settings, but also increasing the damage you do, sounds great. Look at Control, for example, which has a one-shot cheat mode that, while obviously making the game easier, also makes it incredibly satisfying if you're a facile child. To the point where I went from turning it on as a novelty to just leaving it on because it felt so badass. God have mercy on us both. I swear I can't stand this man. Happ's ideas aren't the only ones in this area, of course, nor are they the first, but seeing them both mentioned together like that is great to see published somewhere like the PlayStation blog, because they're much more nuanced and practical way of approaching difficulty than the tired, we need a story mode versus get good argument. So now I've read you the article, let's bring you back to my initial statement towards the beginning of this video. Video games are an interactive medium. Making bosses optional, the actual interactive part of the game where you, play the game, is not a good thing. I didn't get into an argument on Twitter. I tried to get into an argument on Twitter, but the guy I was trying to pick a fight with was much more polite and reasonable, and I couldn't actually do it. Do you have any idea how much of a loser you feel like when in your free time you're just trying to start shit on Twitter and you can't even do that right? I gotta get my life together, man, I swear to God. But this was about Death Stranding, which apparently has a director's cut coming out for God only knows what reason. See, Death Stranding, I thought it was a pretty good game. I enjoyed the gameplay, but towards the end, the cutscenes became insufferable. It's a Hideo Kojima game. Of course the cutscenes ended up becoming entirely too fucking long. I swear to God, like an hour-long cutscene. I don't even think that's an exaggeration. It went on, several cutscenes went on for fucking ever. An hour-long cutscene belongs in a video game the same way tackling somebody out of their shoes belongs in a soccer match. It doesn't. You want to go watch a movie, and I want to play rugby. So how about you leave video games alone until you want to actually play a video game, go watch a movie, and I'll stop beating up soccer players and go play rugby. And this right here is a similar problem in a different method of execution. See, taking boss fights out of the game, why even play the game? Go buy a book. Hell, you might say, I want to read the story. You could get the story out of the game from reading the wiki, as well as you're going to get it if you skip all of the actual gameplay of the story and avoiding the bosses because you are an incompetent fool. Like I said, I played the first Axiom Verge. It's not that difficult. Some of the at the start of the game, the bosses were a little hard because you had a pop gun and no health, and then they got easier as you stockpiled more and more pickups and power-ups and weapons and all this, until you got to the final boss, which, unless you unlocked the super-duper cheeseball weapon you basically needed a guide to unlock, was gonna whoop ya ass. But it's a final boss. It should kind of whoop ya ass a little bit. And I'm hardly the world's greatest gamer. I managed to beat it without the super cheeseball weapon I didn't even know existed until after I beat it. So unless they plan a massive difficulty spike for Axiom Verge 2, it's not so hard you need to make the bosses optional. The actual gameplay of the video game, at the risk of stating the excruciatingly, ass-bleedingly obvious, is the cornerstone of the video game. Making it optional is moronic. Of course the gameplay is optional. You have the option of simply not buying the video game. But you might be thinking, oh, Redman, what does it matter if I want to skip the bosses? Well, let's see. We got a comment, one comment from the only human being that reads Kotaku, assuming this is in fact a human being and not like a Chinese bot designed to run a psyop to demoralize the West. Sign of the Nine says here in response to the whole bosses being optional, this is really cool. As someone who plays on story mode and wants to experience a game and then move on to the next one, I applaud this. You don't want to experience a game. You want to read a book or watch a movie. So why don't you just go do that? I'm kind of shit at soccer, as you can imagine. I don't go into soccer and then tell people, oh, you gotta make this whole sport fit my particular set of skills and abilities and wants and desires and all this shit. I just go play rugby or basketball, which I'm also kind of shit at, but I can manage and pick up games, What I don't do is go into stuff I don't like and ruin it for people who do like it. Why don't you find something you actually like and go ruin that? And before I get told to get good, this is totally optional. The way I play the game doesn't affect the way you play the game at all. Note the italics. I just hate these people, man. I can't fucking help it. But let me explain to this dweeb and any economic illiterates who might be listening right now what an opportunity cost is. An opportunity cost is that which you give up by taking a given course of action. Like, say, if I'm trying to decide between playing Warframe and having a FAP, and I decide to play Warframe, the opportunity cost is having a FAP, because we all have a limited amount of time on this earth, and we can't be in two places at once. Picking any option is going to carry the opportunity cost of whatever you would have done if you didn't pick the option you did pick. As it pertains to this, the opportunity cost of either designing a switch to be able to flip the bosses on and off, or designing the whole game around making the bosses optional, giving you multiple paths, is the time that could have been spent making the actual game better, instead of pandering to insipid fools that clearly do not even like video games in the first place. Hopefully, Tom Happ, he's clearly not a stupid man. He made a not just functioning video game, but I would say a pretty good video game. He's not a complete moron by any stretch. Hopefully he's doing stupid shit like this just to get free press from stupid people like Mr. Plunkett and Sign of the Nine down here to drum up word of mouth for his product. But I've not seen a lot of positive reaction to this outside of, the cancerous tumor that is Kotaku. I initially saw it on Twitter, and everybody's reaction to it was, what the fuck? Because most people instinctively understand that the whole point of a video game is to play it. Play the gameplay. If the gameplay, like I said, is inherently optional because you can choose to just not play the game at all. Why are you playing the game and then opting out of the gameplay? That's a waste of $15 or $20, whatever this is going to cost. And it's sad to see video games still in current year be ashamed of being video games, whether it's Hideo Kojima trying to turn them into fucking feature-length films, or Tom Happ trying to turn them into completely optional storybooks, basically. I just wanted to pontificate about that for a time, listen to the sound of my own voice, which I believe is quite sultry. Let me know if I'm wildly off base on the tone of my own voice, or anything else I said in this video regarding this whole philosophy of video games and what they are. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for watching this far. I'm the Red Man. I'll see you next time. Part 2 of my Final Fantasy VII shit show. Do eventually. I don't know why I keep lying to you. I promise I'll get on it sooner or later. Until next time, take care.